Welcome to Talking Buffalo, featuring conversations with guests from around the world of sports, media, pop culture, and all things Buffalo. With your host, Patrick Moran.
All right, and we're off here, episode 915, Talking Buffalo, your weekday daily driver for Buffalo sports talk and more. My name is Patrick Moran. Big thank you to everyone out there, as always, for watching and for listening, for following and subscribing. I appreciate you guys very, very much. This is all right, so we're taping this on a Tuesday morning. I need to preface this because so many things are going on this Tuesday. You got, well, for starters, it's election day. Matt Warren from SB Nation joins me. Half this country, Matt, no matter which way it goes, as we're recording this, half this country is going to be really pissed off for the majority of people who are watching this and listening to this, hopefully sometime on Wednesday. It is going to be a day. It might be a day where I might take a day off from social media. I might have to. I might force myself to throw up this episode with the links and then not touch Twitter or Facebook for a minimum 24 to 48 hours. How you doing, buddy?
I'm okay. Yeah, I haven't voted yet. We're going later this afternoon. When my wife gets off work, I'm looking forward to being able to do that. And I don't even think it's gonna just be for the next 24 to 48 hours. I think it's gonna be longer than that. So we'll see. We'll see how that goes.
You're right. I mean, it's gonna be longer than that, but it's gonna be at its peak. It's gonna be the most insufferable late Tuesday into Wednesday, maybe Thursday, depending on how long it takes to find out who actually won this election. Again, we don't really want to speak out an election when we're recording at 11 a.m. the day of the election. I also want to preface that for another reason as well. I know this is going to happen. So we're recording this Wednesday, 11 a.m. I'm sorry, Tuesday 11 a.m. Today is the NFL trade deadline. I know that we're going to record this. I'm going to upload it to the computer. I'm going to go through all my editing process, and I'm going to get it all queued up to go. And sure enough, when I'm done within 15 minutes, something's going to happen involving the Buffalo Bills, whether it's a trade, whether it's some injury news, whether it's a move to Kansas City or, an AFC rival that is worthy of talking about, that we're not going to be talking about on the show today. But I need to preface that so that people are like, well, how the hell are you not talking about whatever? That's why. You know what? I don't want to ask you what your expectations are for today, because by the time people hear this, it's going to be dead and gone. I was trying to think of something we could do this week that would be a little bit different. And again, with the trade deadline, not talking about something that's as recent. So I came up with, this is the midpoint of the season. 2 quarters past the midpoint. And I told Matt, this would be a great week to do a Buffalo Bills midseason award show. Again, 9 games in, technically it would be 8.5 over a 17-game season, but whatever, close enough. You ready to do this, man?
Yes.
All right, so there's going to be some good ones, some bad ones, and then afterwards we'll talk about some other stuff with the Bills and also go around the AFC. Quick note, too, tomorrow's show, Eric Wood's going to be joining me. We'll be talking some Buffalo Bills, how he's doing up in the radio booth. He went and took his family to Indianapolis last Friday night to go see Taylor Swift in concert. Honestly, Matt, that's why I hit him up. I texted him. I said, dude, come on the show. I want to know all about the Taylor Swift experience. So you'll get that on Talking Buffalo tomorrow. Let's start with the Offensive Player of the Year, but this is with a caveat here. I called this the non-Josh Allen Offensive Player of the Year because it would just be so glaringly obvious Josh Allen is the Offensive Player of the Year, and Josh Allen's the team MVP. All right, so let's just get that out there through the halfway point of the season. So we're going to exclude. There is no Josh Allen hardware to be handed out on this show today. Let's start there. Halfway through the season, right now as things stand, who is your Buffalo Bills Offensive Player of the Year and why?
Well, I think it's easy to go with James Cook because he leads the Bills in touchdowns and yards from scrimmage, but I'm actually going to go with Khalil Shakir. He's second on that yards from scrimmage list at 475. He's like obviously automatic. They keep talking about how every time he's targeted, he catches the ball. And you really see how his absence impacted the team against Houston when they couldn't really buy any receiver getting separation. And so I'm just going to go with Khalil Shakir right now. I would love to see him get some more snaps and like them integrate him a little bit more. But that's who I'm going with. But there's a very strong case to be made for James Cook.
I agree. And by the way, I want to let you know, so Matt's going to give us his opinion, and then I got mine as well. I don't know who Matt's taking until I hear it at the same time that you guys are. Ditto, vice versa. You don't know who I was going with. I agree with you. It was same deal as what you just said. I got to go with Khalil Shakir too. 42 catches, 471 yards, 2 touchdowns. At this projected rate, he would finish the season with 79 catches, 890 yards, and 4 touchdowns. Let me say that again. 79 for 890. Who doesn't sign up for that in August or September, right? That's a hell of a season, I think, for Khalil Shakir. Yeah, he catches everything. Except there was he didn't drop it, but it was an intended pass for him that was not caught on a Sunday, which actually dropped him down from being number 1 in the NFL to like number 3 or something like that. But yeah, he just brings an element to this offense. I think with respect to James Cook, who I would give honorable mention to, this offense is more lost when Shakir's not out there as opposed to James Cook. As good as James Cook is, Ray Davis and Ty Johnson are very capable. No Khalil Shakir, this offense suffers. And we've seen that firsthand, whether it's working the slot, where we're in the middle of the field, taking these bubble screens, which he did several times against Miami and turning nothing into 6-7. Are you amazed sometimes, Matt, just how slippery this guy is? Like in close spaces, he makes you miss. In a phone booth, it's almost wild because it doesn't look like he's got that in him, that kind of game in him, but he certainly does, doesn't he?
Yeah, the balance he has, especially the contact balance after he gets hit and like after the contact, he's able to stay on his feet and do things like you said in a phone booth while getting hit. That it's so surprising every time he does it, and like so you just keep forgetting that it's going to happen the next time it happens.
Sure, and you made this point. There's a lot of people out there who would like to see him get more snaps. I'm not necessarily one of them, though, because if there's one part of his game where he does not do well, and it's run block, and he's not a good run blocker. And if you're going to be out there running the ball or showing the run, and he's not out there, that might lead teams to think that you're going to run. You might be able to run some more play action pass. I'm all right with the. And let's not forget, by the way, with his pace, he missed a game, and he played against the Jets, but he was almost useless that game because of his ankle. I mean, he had 2 catches for like 10 yards, so. He's basically missed almost a game and a half worth of action and still on pace for 79 and 890.
He has played about 50% of the snaps. I just would like to see it tick above Matt Collins, who's at 63%.
Sure. Yeah, and I also had honorable mention for James Cook. He's just under 500 yards. He's at 496 rushing yards. He's finding the end zone a lot this season, which he did not do last year. He's also got 19 catches for $170, but a couple bad drops, which, that plagued him. It hasn't been as bad this year as it was last year. Like last year's drops felt a lot more costly, but he's had a couple this year as well. You want to see him improve on that. All right, so we both agree Khalil Shakir, Offensive Player of the Year at the midseason point. What about Defensive Player of the Year? What you got?
Well, I mean, I think the short list is Terrell Bernard, Greg Rousseau, and Taron Johnson. I mean, you might have Christian Benford on there too, but those 3 were my short list. And especially when Von Miller was out, Rousseau was just freaking everywhere. He's playing a ton of snaps at a position where McDermott has traditionally liked to rotate guys more. I think he's up to 72% of the defensive end snaps. He's been great in run support. So I'm going to go with Rousseau. I mean, it's hard to take it out of Bernard's hands or even Taron Johnson, but I think just because Rousseau's played so much and those other 2 guys have been hurt for a game or 2 here and there, I'm going to give it to the young guy, Greg Rousseau.
Okay, I think we're going to be agreeing on a lot of these. Yeah, Taron Johnson just missed 4 games. He's missed 4 out of 9 games, so I can't have him as Defensive Player of the Year. Although you can make a really good case that he's impacted so really good. Hugely 2 like game impactful plays in 2 of their wins and just playing basically a half a season. Yeah, Bernard's been great too, but again, he's missed He's missed, I think, 3 games so far this season. Yeah, look, I got to go with Groot as well, which is funny because the sacks really aren't that impressive. He's only got 4.5 sacks this year. But if you throw the sacks away, he's so much more than that.
Oh, yeah.
84.3 PFF grade, which I know some people are like, they roll their eyes when they see a PFF grade. I get it more times than not. Anyway, that's the best on the team this year. 23 hurries, his 11 quarterback hits, including 6 in one game, which was the most anyone's had in 2 seasons in the NFL. And he's got 11 tackles for a loss this year, which is tied for first of any defensive player in the entire NFL. He was the AFC Defensive Player of the Week in week 1. This is kind of easy, actually. So the more you go through these numbers, it becomes a little bit easier. And he didn't have a sack against the Titans, but he just killed the Titans. So, yeah, I'm going to go with Groot. My honorable mention is Benford. I just think he's become a stud at corner. I mean, he just takes players out of the game, and he's physical. He doesn't make mistakes. He's been more than what you could have hoped for. All right, so we're in agreement on the first 2. Again, to recap, Khalil Shakir is the non-Josh Allen Offensive Player of the Year, and Groot is both of our Defensive Players of the Year. If you're watching this or listening to this, I'd love to hear what you think about these. Let us know in the comments. Best rookie. I feel like this is going to be an easier one too, but
I think so.
Elaborate. Yeah. We'll elaborate. We'll go through. Go ahead. What do you got?
I mean, Keon Coleman hasn't just played well. He's really exceeded all of my expectations so far this year. He's leading rookie receivers in yards per catch. He's 5th in yards and touchdowns among rookie receivers. And you know how many receivers got picked in the first couple of rounds of the 2024 NFL draft. Ray Davis has obviously done a nice job, but I mean, he only played 9 snaps on offense against Miami. They're clearly he's just got that third running back kind of weird, undefined role. But when he's been asked to play, or when, when James Cook was out, he's played really well. So I'm very hopeful that, I mean, maybe not this year, but into the future, that Davis, gets a bigger role. But I think for this question, best rookie of 2024, I mean, Keon Coleman is head and shoulders above anybody else.
I agree with you. But before I talk about Keon, I want to go back to Ray Davis a little bit. In another year, you can make a really good case for Ray Davis right now. 61 carries, 262 yards, which is fine. But the fact that he's been so huge in 2 Bills victories this year, not just 2 Bills victories, but 2 Bills victories against AFC East divisional rivals, that carries a lot of weight. He was amazing against the Jets. James Cook did not play. That offense did not miss a beat whatsoever. You can make an argument in that game for that matchup. Ray Davis would have been better off than James Cook anyway. And then, to your point, he only had 9 snaps against Miami. Well, guess what? One of them was a 63-yard touchdown reception that gave the Bills the lead. He also had a 7-yard catch. He had an 8-yard run. So when he's getting those opportunities, he's making the most of them. He had a couple carries inside the 5-yard line that didn't go anywhere. But yeah, man, a 4th-round rookie. I've been ultra impressed. I was optimistic about him going into the season, and this is the best realistic case that I could hope for with what we've seen from Ray. Keon, he's been a game changer. He's been an impactful player. 22 catches, 417 yards. He's averaging 19 yards per catch, which is 4th in the NFL. Couple highlight plays, a couple dummy plays. We saw one of them Sunday. He drops a pass. He hit a ball go off his helmet. He also had another bad drop. Let's not forget week 3. He got benched in the first quarter because of tardiness for a meeting or meetings, whatever went on inside the walls there at one Bills drive. But all in all, he's just been spectacular compared to what I expected him to be. So I agree with you there. Let me ask you off topic question right now. I like to always play, hindsight. I like to play armchair quarterback. If you could go back, let's take the trade off the table. Take the trade off the table completely, okay? Say you stay at pick 28. Based on what you've seen from Keon Coleman, based on what you've seen from Xavier Worthy, based on the fit for what you think the identity of this football team is, are you starting to feel like even if you didn't make that trade and you could do it over, you would take Keon Coleman over Xavier Worthy? I know it's a tough question to ask so early in their careers, but
yeah, probably. I mean, there were remember the other ones were like Xavier Legette, Ricky Pearsall, and Xavier Worthy. So like if you lump them all together, I think that you probably end up with Keon Coleman anyway. But like really, I'd be happy with any of those guys right now. I mean, Ricky Pearsall wouldn't have been shot, so his numbers would probably be better. But you know, like I mean, I'd be happy with any of those guys. And I think that the Bills could have used any of their skill sets, but I think they're starting to sort of figure out Coleman's skill set with Josh Allen. Like you're seeing more of those contested catches. You're seeing more of those back shoulder throws that Allen really hasn't done a lot over the course of the last few years because Steph Diggs was open when he was like making his cuts. And that's obviously not Coleman's game. So I'd be happy with any of those guys, I think.
Well, if I go back in a time capsule, and if I'm being honest, I was more mad. I was not mad that the Bills traded down. I was not mad that the Bills did not get Xavier Worthy. He wasn't my guy. Xavier Legette was my guy. I like him. I think he's going to be a good player, and I think he was a good fit for the Bills. And this is not Homer talk, I promise you this, but I think I would take Coleman right now over Xavier Worthy for this team. What he does, the physicality that he brings to the offense, the contested catches, you know, the back shoulder, things like that. The Bills just seem to me to have a problem when they get receivers who are just speed. I mean, Curtis Samuel, oh my God, he's playing hurts. He had a turf toe early in the year, and I've kind of have learned a little bit more from other people about Samuel. He's not really been healthy this whole season. The toe's been bothering him. He got hurt, and now he's got a shoulder issue. Like Matt Perino was on the show yesterday and talked about he shouldn't have even played. But they needed him because Cooper couldn't go, and they needed to have him, even if it was just out there. He said that Joe Brady went up to him and told him how proud he was of him after the game just for going out there and for running routes, you know, taking some attention off other guys. But anyway, him, Hardy, some of these McKenzie, these guys who are just like burners with speed, they just don't seem to be that effective in this offense. Give me the route runners. Give me the guys who can come up with the contested catches. I just feel like at this point, Coleman is the better fit. And I'm sure there's a Chiefs fan who gets wind of this. They're going to vehemently disagree and tell me I'm a hater. And Xavier Worthy will probably have 150 yards and 3 touchdowns against the Bills in a couple weeks. I already know that shit's coming, but I'm happy with Keon Coleman. I guess that's my long-winded way of saying the Bills did the right thing, and it looks that way early on. Keon Coleman looks like the real deal, so that's good. All right, one more, then we'll get to a break here. Let's go with who's the Bills' midseason breakout star to you?
Well, as easy as it would be to say Greg Rousseau, I mean, I think his first round status, like I think a lot of us saw this coming. So I'm going to go with Christian Benford. He's playing at a much, much higher level than even I thought. Like I was like, yeah, he's a solid starter. Like, but I think he's just been playing lights out. And so he's my breakout star kind of guy. Like he goes from like, you know, a guy that like, hey, it would be nice if they extended him to like, I really think they do have to extend him now. And I honestly think that that's one of the reasons why Rasul Douglas doesn't have an extension right now is because they're waiting to see what they would get from Benford this year. And now Benford's going to be the one that signs the 4-year extension and not Douglas. So I'm going with him.
You know, it's almost like you're staring at my notes right now.
Oh, sorry.
That's what it feels like. No,
such an interesting podcast.
Yeah. Well, we're still talking about players too. And again, I'm sure there's going to be some people out there who are not going to agree with at least some of these. Maybe as we get in a little deeper to these some of these categories, these have kind of been almost giveaway ones to this point. But yeah, it's Christian Benford, dude. He's become one of the best corners in the NFL. He's allowed 16 catches for 142 yards against him in 8 games this season. And most of those came in one game. Garrett Wilson got him a couple times in that Jets game. Outside of that, this guy's been almost perfect. Teams just completely stay away from him. You know, I go back to the summer and going to training camp and having my own thoughts and listening to a lot of media and a lot of content creators and some fans as well. We're talking about how great Kyrie Elam looked. And I'm like, you know, he's going to be a big player on this team this year. And it ain't nothing against Kyrie Elam, who, by the way, more than held his own. Props to him. He did a good job against Miami. But I'm like, where's he going to play? Is he going to take Christian Benford's spot? What are you, nuts? He's not. And he's obviously not going to take Rasul Douglas' spot either. Kyrie Elam's good, but there's no room for him as long as guys stay healthy. Not because of anything he did wrong, but I'm like, yeah, he can look good all he wants, Kyrie Elam, but Christian Benford's out there. Don't forget that. And I agree with you too. He's went from being a guy that you'd like to keep around to me, like if you're talking about extensions right now, I think he's your number one priority with the Bills with an extension. I mean, he's a lockdown corner. He's become a lockdown corner. Lockdown corners don't grow on trees. He would be my first pick. I did a show, Matt, before we go to break. Let me ask you this. I got to make sure I get all the guys right. Somebody asked me, it was a pod bag episode, and a commenter asked me to power rank how I would prioritize signing Bills pending free agents or extension candidates in order. And it was Benford, Bernard, Shakir, maybe Cook, but Cook wasn't one of the top four. I guess what I'm asking you is, if you're Brandon Beane right now and you're looking through your roster and you really want to lock somebody up, is he your number one guy right now at this point?
He's on the short list. I have Rousseau on that list too. I thought Rousseau was going to get an extension this offseason. He's only signed through 2025, and his price is only going to go up, I think. And so Benford and Rousseau are like the two on my list right now, because you want to lock in a pass rusher. Now that Von Miller's probably going to be gone, you want to lock in a cornerback now that Rasul Douglas is potentially playing his final season in Buffalo. So I would put those two at the top of my list right now.
Okay, we're going to take a real quick break, come back, plenty more Buffalo Bills awards, so some AFC talk as well, all right after this quick break. All right, I am back here with Matt Warren from SB Nation. We are recording this. Now we're getting into close to lunchtime. I got my tweet deck open off to the side here in case anything crazy happens. There have been a couple trades Tuesday morning. Again, we don't really want to jump too much into them because there might be plenty more. But Mingo just went to Dallas. Xavier Smith went to Detroit. That was telegraphed. That had to happen. Detroit, you had to go get an edge guy after losing Hutch. Not a surprise. And then I think a pass rusher went. There was one other trade too. I don't remember. Denver traded with somebody. I don't know. Whatever.
They got Denver traded with Arizona for a pass rusher, and then the Bengals added a running back this morning too, because Zach Moss is hurt. So
Herbert.
I mean, nothing huge, but like it's clear that like you might think the Browns are sellers, the Panthers are sellers, kind of stuff like that.
Sure. All right, let's continue going with our Bills midseason awards. We've arrived to most pleasant surprise player.
So I'm going to go with Connor McGovern here. I did not expect him to be, potentially an upgrade when they changed centers this offseason. He's another guy that could be an extension candidate. His final season on the Bills roster is 2025 as well. So they could give him an extension, since we just talked about that before the break. But, he's been very, very good. Replacing Mitch Morris in the center of that offensive line. And I don't think we've missed a beat in that particular area of the, whether it's making the calls, whether it's making, adjustments on the line. I just think he's been really good. And like, he's the pizza guy, right? He's the one that makes the pizzas. Is that right?
Yeah. Every Friday night or so, like 30 pizzas.
So like, we'll give him bonus points for the pizzas. Okay. We'll give him bonus points.
All right. Well, there you go. We got our first category where we actually have different answers. And that's a good one, by the way. I'm going to go with, despite the fact that I've actually been down on in the last couple weeks, as a whole, 9 games in, I'm pleasantly surprised, to an extent at least anyway, with Dorian Williams.
Okay.
84 tackles this season. We knew the athleticism was there. He's done a lot of good things. He's had some really good hits. He plays in space well. He closes well. Again, he has issues. He gets fooled sometimes with play action, or he'll take the wrong gap. He'll whiff on a tackle he should make. But considering who he's replaced so far this season, Matt Milano, there was a fear that this linebacking unit, especially with Bernard going down, that it was just going to completely fall off the face of this earth. And Dorian Williams has held that position together very well. There was a point where even when him and Spector were out there playing,
right,
and they did a good job. I think it was Jacksonville on Monday night without Bernard, and the defense was fine. So I was very concerned about that going into the season. I thought that would be an Achilles heel. I thought that with the trade deadline literally today as we're recording this, we would have been pounding the table for a linebacker. But I think he's played well enough that I really don't think that's been the case. So I got him winning. Honorable mention, I'll tell you what, Von Miller, it looked like he was completely washed up and it has been and done last year. And he's got 3 sacks in 4 games. Those first 3 games, he played very, very well. Then he got suspended. Didn't really do much against Miami. Well, he jumped off sides on the 3rd and 3 to give him a first down. That hurt the Bills. But that game aside, I think all in all, and he's going to be a lot more important now with Smoot being injured as well. I think Von Miller's been a pleasant surprise. And I can't believe I'm saying this, but Damar Hamlin's on the come up to me. And it's no secret what I thought of his play early in the season. It's no secret that his father took exception to what I thought of his play early in the season. But I'll tell you what, 3 consecutive games now, I think Damar Hamlin has played well. So he's played his way into this conversation. I had 0 expectations for him as a starter. I had a conversation with Matt Perino on the show yesterday and kind of painted a really good picture. And he just talked about how maybe early in the season, Damar hadn't played real football since 2022. And early in the season, all he cared about was not getting beat. Don't let no one get behind you, you know? But as the weeks have went on and he's gotten more comfortable and confident in his game, you're starting to see, like Matt pointed out a stat where he had like 4 or 5 missed tackles over a couple weeks, but he's only had like 1 missed tackle in the last 3 games combined. So he's tackling better. He's coming up on plays more. He's playing a lot better. And whether you like him or not, I think he's your guy for the rest of the year. They're not going to Mike Edwards. If Mike Edwards is even a Bill tomorrow, we'll see. Right. But and Cole Bishop is a rookie. They're not going with him now. They're certainly not going to go with him barring injury and having no choice in January. So it's Damar Hamlin. That's your guy this year. But I think he's been playing a lot better. What have you been seeing the last couple of weeks with him? Do you kind of agree with that assessment?
Well, I definitely think he's playing less safe, if that's a thing. Like, I mean, he was playing so far back in the early goings that we saw him come up to make so many tackles. And now it feels like he's at least in the mix when the ball gets there. Gets there, even if he's not like the first guy there, he's just closer to the action. And so, I'm certainly not saying that like as he's like worried about injury or anything like that, but like you said, he just doesn't want to get beat deep. And I think he's just getting a little bit more comfortable getting up into the mix, a couple steps closer to the line of scrimmage. And that's what I've been seeing from him. I definitely agree with all of what you said about Hamlin. He's probably done better than I expected him to do over the course of the year. But I had low expectations for him. I thought he was a replacement level player.
Yeah. I think he's went from liability to serviceable, and now he's flirting with becoming an asset to the defense. So that's it's obviously a good thing. Let's go flip side here. Most disappointing players so far this season.
It's hard to choose between Marquez Valdez-Scantling and Curtis Samuel at the wide receiver position, but both of them, like, obviously have underperformed what we had expectations of for them. I know you're saying Samuel has been dealing with some injuries throughout the year, but like he wasn't on the injury report for a good chunk of the season, even if he did miss time in training camp. So like, I mean, it's understandable. I get it, but just definitely those 2 receivers, I expected more out of them as we entered the season and just haven't seen it to this point.
I'm gonna back to agreeing with you there. Yeah, it's got to be Curtis Samuel at this point. Yeah. There were 8 games. Well, he's played 8 games, 12 catches for 92 yards. 38 of those 92 yards came out 1 catch. 1 catch, and the catch didn't really matter. It didn't have any impact in the game. So he's been a complete non-factor for the Bills. $8 million a season. You want to see something out of him. To me, and it's not even so much, again, Curtis Samuel, how healthy he is, that we really don't know. But what we do know is that it feels like Joe Brady has no idea how to use this guy. He's no more critical to the Bills offense right now than Jalen Virgil is when he's elevated from the practice squad. I mean, let's just keep it real. So I don't know, maybe in the second half of the year, Matt, I keep alluding to what Matt was talking about on the show yesterday, but he had some points that really resonated with me. Maybe the Bills are doing some things or not doing some things early in the year that they'll get to later in the season in December and January, some wrinkles and things to the offense and maybe the defense as well, but especially the offense that we're not seeing right now. So you got to hope if you want to put on the optimistic hat that maybe Curtis Samuel will be a factor down the stretch, which, kind of wouldn't matter then, what he's done now to this point. Who cares? But he's my guy. I'm going to give honorable mention Ed Oliver. Ed Oliver's got 1 sack this season, dude. I think he's got 1 sack. I don't know. Whatever. Actually, my bad. He's got 2 sacks or 2.5 sacks. Regardless, here's my point, dude. Ed Oliver has been up and down. He's also been hurt. The hamstring has affected him, I think, at times. There were points of some games where he was great. That first meeting in Miami, he was a monster. He was great. I also remember that first game against Arizona. I remember going nuts. I was like, where's Ed Oliver? Is he even playing? Nothing. I thought he was lousy on Sunday against Miami as well. You're getting nothing from him. Him, Daquan Jones had 1 tackle combined between both of them. And Ed Oliver played 72% of the snaps on Sunday. And all he had is 1 tackle in the stat sheet. And I'm tired of people defending every single thing. Every time you try to criticize the Bills, God forbid you're critical of something, they gotta fire back at you with some nonsense. Yes, Tua got rid of the ball quick. I get that. Yes, Miami had a great game plan. Yes, the offensive line played well. I don't care. You're Ed Oliver. Go get me more than 1 tackle throughout the course of a game. This has happened like 3-4 times this year. Matt, here's my thing. Ed Oliver, and this is the reason why I have him in a disappointing category.
Yeah.
Not that he's been awful, but I just don't think he's been more than average so far this year. And Ed Oliver is just straight up too important to this defense. If you're going to run a light box, you're only going to have 2 linebackers and a nickel guy up there every play. You got to win up front. Your defensive tackles have to win. And when Ed Oliver doesn't win, that whole defense, I feel like, suffers. And he's just been okay to me. He's too important to the success of this defense to just be okay. You agree with that?
Yeah, I think that's right. To your point before, like he was out for those 2 games, only played half the snaps against the Titans because the Bills were up big early. And he's played a ton of snaps to get like not very much production. I thought Joe Buscaglia made a nice point in this game against Miami is that they were so unhappy with the 3rd and 4th defensive tackles that they ended up splitting Daquan Jones and Ed Oliver up in the second half. Well, I guess it was only in the 4th quarter, so that those 2 guys weren't riding next to each other, just so that they could have like a bare minimum at all times against the Miami Dolphins. And then at the very end of the game, both of them were on the field again together. But like, it just feels like that defensive tackle, the whole rotation has been underperforming in general. Like Jones and Oliver have played a little bit better than they did in the very beginning of the season. But it just feels like that whole defensive tackle, like that's why I think defensive tackle might be the one place that they might trade for, right before this trade deadline in the next, few hours here.
If I'm hearing more and noticing Eli Anku more than I'm noticing Ed Oliver, that's not a good thing. And that's nothing against Anku, man. He did play a pretty nice game. He's done some nice things since getting an opportunity. Good for him. But he should not be as effective on this defense as Ed Oliver, just straight up there. All right, let's continue. Got some more of these going here. Most underrated player.
Yeah, I think among Bills fans, it might be Greg Rousseau. I don't think like they see 4.5 sacks and like they expect him to have like, 8, 9, 10 sacks at this point in the season. But I think he's like, especially against the run. And like you were saying, his tackles for a loss number are very good. Like he's just, he does everything that they're asking him to do at defensive end, and he's doing it really, really well. So I think around Bills fans, it might be Greg Rousseau. And nationally, I think it's Khalil Shakir. I don't think he gets nearly enough credit nationally. The whole targets thing, when that became like, a talking point, I think that was like the first time his name got some shine outside of Western New York, but he just still is like that guy that's a little bit under the radar. And part of it's because he plays in the slot for the most part. He's not going to be your number 1 receiver, but I just think he's just such a good player. And most people outside of Buffalo don't know his name.
That's very fair. I'm going to go deep into the weeds here with an underrated player, a guy that not only is he underrated to me, but he's not even someone that you talk about. You don't hear much about him. You don't hear his name often, which in this case to me is a good thing. I'm going to go with David Edwards as my underrated player right now. This offensive line last year was by far at that point Josh Allen's best offensive line that he's ever had throughout his Buffalo Bills career. So you go this offseason and you cut Mitch Morse. You move Connor McGovern to center. That in itself was like a huge leap of faith. And then you take David Edwards, who was your this year's Alec Anderson, who played that role so well in 2023, and you more or less handed him the starting job. Like, he had no legitimate competition whatsoever this summer. That worried me a little bit. The continuity of the offensive line, the health of the offensive line, et cetera, et cetera. David Edwards, by no means, has been like spectacular, but he's been solid. He's been consistent. I looked up his PFF grades, which, again, I know PFF, no end-all be-all, but he's got a 66.3 overall grade, 65.0 run block, 64.9 blocking grade, pass blocking grade. All pretty much the same. This dude has just been really consistent, and you can make a case right now that this offensive line this year is every bit as good as the offensive line was last year. That to me is in no small part because of David Edwards. When you have an offensive line, it only takes one really weak link for that whole unit to fall apart, and they haven't missed a beat. So I think David Edwards deserves a lot of praise for that. To me, that makes him an underrated player. Also, quickly here, honorable mention, I'm going to throw Ty Johnson in there as kind of an underrated player. He's an afterthought. You know, you got James Cook, you got Ray Davis doing his thing. Ty Johnson is average 5.8 yards per carry, only 17 carries, but he makes the most of them. 6 catches, 65 yards, 2 touchdown catches this year, including Cook and Jalen Ramsey in week 2 on that nice wheel route. So I'm going to show some love, man. I think Ty Johnson's been an underrated player on this team. Like, I would hate for him to get injured just because I trust him. When Ty Johnson's on the football field, I trust him. He's going to make that block. He's going to run the right route. Yeah. He's going to catch the ball if it hits his hands. You know what I mean? So got a lot of love here on this podcast for Ty Johnson. All right,
and that's why he carved out that third down role, because they trust him. Yeah. Like, they trust him to make that block when Josh Allen is like buying one more second to find a guy on third down.
What a great low-key plucking he was last year from the Jets practice squad. Just say that. All right, best game. We're kind of off individuals here now, which, by the way, we disagreed on 2 of those at least, so that's not too bad. Best game.
I am just going to give it to the Bills versus the Jaguars. It was so much fun to watch. It was, a primetime game. For whatever reason, the Jaguars decided that they were just going to keep running their man defense at Josh Allen, and he was just like slicing and dicing. It was a game that, the Bills were up 13-0, and then you thought that there was a time where the Jaguars might have a chance to come back. But by the end of the second quarter, the Bills were up 34-3, and you could just sit back. You could start writing your game recaps. You could start doing all the stuff at halftime, and it was just a calm. Even when Tyler Bass goes out there for a 43-yard field goal, you're not really worried because the Bills are up 37-10 at the time. So it was just a nice, fun game to watch.
Yeah. Look, that could easily be the choice. I'm going to go in a little bit of a different direction. Everything you said is right, but I thought what they did to Seattle, to me, was the most impressive. Now, they might lose a couple points because they didn't play against DK Metcalf, but you know what? There were Bills players who were hurt as well. But that was just a game. Everything worked. Both sides of the football. They ran the ball. James Cook was unstoppable. Josh Allen was really good. The passing game was great with Amari Cooper having 1 catch for 4 yards. The defense utterly stymied Kenneth Walker III, which I was very, very worried about going into that game. It can be really tough to go into Seattle, a very loud stadium, and win, let alone dominate, which is what the Buffalo Bills did there. So, yeah, Jacksonville's a great choice, but I'm going to go with Seattle. Let's flip it here.
Yeah, that's a good choice, too.
Worst game. What do you got as your worst game?
It's got to be the Ravens game. They just got absolutely punched in the mouth from beginning to end. You look at the power rankings around the NFL on, Tuesday, and you see people have the Ravens above the Bills, even though the Bills' record's better. The Bills are in better playoff position just because Ravens absolutely dominated the Bills. How are you going to put them ahead of them? So it was a hard game to watch because you knew what was going to happen. You've seen this script before. Derek freaking Henry goes 87 yards on the first play, and it's just all right, or one of the first plays, I don't know.
That was their first offensive play. First play, literally.
That's what I thought. Okay, and you just the whole air gets taken. I think that's what happened to the team too. The air just got taken out of the sideline, and they just weren't able to recover from it. So it was just an ugly, ugly game in a lot of ways, and that's the one I'm going to go with.
I'm gonna interpret this worst game a little bit differently. You're 100% right. Like the Bills' worst game was 100% Baltimore. That's easy. But for me, I'm gonna define worst game as the game where I was like the most angry at after the fact, after the game. For that reason, I'm going with Houston. I'm going with the Houston game only for that reason. Baltimore, you kind of knew by 7 minutes into the game, this was going to be a long night for the Buffalo Bills. You kind of got that sense. I resigned myself to it, just accepting that. It was ugly to watch, but whatever. I kind of got that out of my head quickly. Like, I got over that game in a few minutes. The Houston game, they had a great chance to win the game at the end, despite everything that went wrong. No Khalil Shakir, no Teron Johnson. Josh Allen played like shit. I mean, he was terrible that game. That was one of the worst games he's probably had in his career. I think it was, 9 for 30 throwing the ball? That's absurd. And the Bills still had the football and a good opportunity to take the lead late in the game. Who knows what Houston does? And then, the debacle on that last, instead of trying to run the clock out and get to overtime. But yeah, so the way they ran their offense at the end of the game, the fact that they were in a position to win that game, despite all the shit that was going against him, for that reason, it left the worst taste in my mouth. So I'm going to go with that as my my worst game.
The Bills had a chance to take the lead inside of 4 minutes too after they got that turnover. They just went like 3 and out, kicked the field goal. Tyler Bass kicks the 33-yard field goal to tie the game, but they could have easily taken the lead there. So that was a really, really frustrating game. Like they were down most of the game, then they claw their way back and still kind of right. I don't know.
I was ready. At halftime, it was 17-3. I was ready to kind of fold the towel in, but then the Bills came out and played better. And the fact that they should have won that game, in my opinion, to be fair, they also should have gotten blown out of the game in the first half. It should have been well over at halftime, but they didn't. And they were in position to win at the end. That kind of really, that got under my skin. It still bothers me a little bit. All right, best play of the season so far.
The Taron Johnson peanut punch really changed that game this past week. That might be recency bias. But the Bills defense was really struggling to stop a lot of the Dolphins offensive attack. So I like that one. A few fourth down plays come to mind. The James Cook kind of walk-in touchdown on the fourth down mesh play against Miami in week 2. Just the absurd Allen to Quentin Morris touchdown pass from this past week. Even Tyler Bass's 61-yard kick, that's one of the best plays of the year. So I'll just throw all of those out there. But my favorite play was probably the James Cook week 2 touchdown, just because it worked just so absolutely perfectly.
On fourth down. Yeah. And that was the first drive of the game too. Not only did the Bills score, I feel like the Bills sent a message and they set the tone right off the bat. So yeah, that's definitely up there. Tyler Bass definitely gets honorable mention for me. I mean, that kick won a game. Who knows? He misses that kick, they lose in overtime. Who knows what his future may hold? Not because he missed a 61-yard kick, but because he missed an extra point earlier, which didn't end up mattering in the score because the Bills got a 2-point conversion. But still, you know how that shit works with kickers. So anyway, that is up there. The Keon Coleman bullying Woolen in the end zone and taking that ball away from him. That was pretty sweet. You mentioned the Teron Johnson peanut punch. I'm going to go with the Teron Johnson interception against Aaron Rodgers late in the fourth quarter, partially because I predicted that on the previous show as one of my bold predictions that Teron Johnson was going to have a late interception or turnover to seal the game for the Bills. And that's what he did. That's a play where you really see the difference. Sometimes when you got a starter out and a depth guy comes in, there's a drop off, but it's not night and day. All I can think about when I see that play is, with respect, because I like him a lot, but Cam Lewis ain't making that play. To be fair, very few slot corners in the NFL or corners, period, are making that play. Teron just has the flair for the dramatic, like the big plays.
You sure does.
And to do it against the Jets late in the fourth quarter on the road on Monday night, to me, that would be, for me, that was the biggest play. Let's flip it here. Worst play of the season or worst play of the season.
Right. I just talked about it. It was Derrick Henry's 87-yard rush to open the game against Baltimore. Like I said, it completely sapped the Bills of, not hope is the wrong word, but it just laid them out so flat so early. And while they eventually kind of sort of got their feet under them, it just it felt like it set the tone for a game that they really needed to win, or at least be competitive in. I mean, and so that's the worst play for me was the 87-yard rush to open the game.
I'm going to go same game. See, now this is getting interesting because people are tuning in. It's not just the Pat and Matt agreement show here. And I'll say it again. I want to hear your comments. Make sure you leave them in the comments section. I'm going same game, but for me, it was that stupid flea flicker. All right, so they're down 21-10. The Bills were getting smacked, and it felt like I said it was over, but it's 21-10. I believe they got a turnover too, and they're driving, and if they score, it's a one-score game. Hell, they score a touchdown, they're only down 3 to 4 points, and it's 2nd and 7. You're on the Baltimore 44, which is a passing down, 2nd and 7, and Joe Brady dials out one of the worst trick plays I've ever seen in my life. A design flea flicker. It becomes a fumble. The Bills lose the ball, the game right there, and you almost got Josh Allen hurt. No, that could have been a devastating play on the season. That, to me, weeks and weeks later, I still think was Joe Brady, one of the dumbest things. Hopefully it's one of the dumbest things he's ever done in his life. Hopefully he hasn't done a lot of dumb things off the field, but that was just stupidity at its worst. I mean, what a dumb call, especially on a passing down. Like if it's 2nd and 1, if it's 1st and 10 and you just ran for a couple first downs, I could see that. But 2nd and 7 when they're expecting you to throw the football, it'll never make sense to me. That's my winner. I'll quickly here. I do have an honorable mention, and it's not a player, it's a coach, and it's Sean McDermott. That last play before the half against the Jets, when they put 2 guys on the line of scrimmage to prevent defense that allowed all those guys to get to the end zone. And then the Hail Mary, to me, God, I wish there was a camera on me. If you could have seen my temper tantrum watching that on TV as it unfolded in real time, man. Woo. God damn.
I believe you.
All right, here. We're almost done with these. We got 2 more left. Biggest storyline so far this season. What is your biggest storyline right now?
Well, I mean, I think these 2 kind of storylines go hand in hand, but the Bills' demise was greatly overstated, and then the rest of the AFC East's rise was greatly overstated. So those 2 things really do go hand in hand. The fact that the Bills are up, whatever it is, 4.5 games with, still half the season left to play is just obviously a huge storyline. And it's really ridiculous considering how many people picked the Jets, how many people picked the Dolphins, how many people said the Bills were losing too many players to be competitive. This was the year that they were going to step back, and they're just absolutely toying with their food in the AFC East right now.
You're 100% right though. Look, if I had to submit this, if this was an exam and the teacher, you got to write it down, that 100% would be my answer as well. I'm gonna cheat a little bit though, just so we can have a quick talking point or 2 here. Let me give you 2 biggest storylines, not counting the fact that the AFC East is pretty much over, because that is the biggest storyline in itself without question. I'm gonna give you 1 good, 1 bad. The good so far has been the Bills' ability to overcome key injuries this season. And we're not even going to count Matt Milano, who has yet to play a snap. But Teron Johnson has missed, and they played for 9 games now. Teron has missed 4 games. Terrell Bernard has missed 3 games. Ed Oliver's missed 2 games. Von Miller's been suspended for 4 games. Christian Benford did not play last week. Amari Cooper did not play last week. James Cook missed a Monday Night Football game in New Jersey. That's a lot of not just injuries. And I might even be forgetting a couple. That's a lot of key injuries right now that the Bills have overcome, and they're still 7-2 on the season. Josh Allen has played hurt, at least for a while. That hand was hurt. I know he's had a sore shoulder and other things like that. So for me, the good thing is the way the Bills have overcome key injuries. Flip side, the bad thing, we talked about this earlier. The defensive tackle position to me has just been so underwhelming so far, big time. And if they don't find a way to improve that, whether it's adding somebody to the team, whether it's a trade, whether it's a street free agent like they tried to last year with Laval Joseph, something, or these guys just don't, they don't step up. You're looking at the same thing. I hate to say it, but come January, when you're playing the Ravens in the playoffs, or maybe the Steelers in the playoffs, Kansas City, a team like that, if you're getting weak defensive tackle play against one of those teams in January, you're going to get that same result, which is going to be a a wild card or a divisional round loss at the end of the day. That's scary to me. That's the biggest storyline for me on the negative side.
Yeah. No, I think that's absolutely right. And like, you can also say that the injuries thing is kind of the biggest storyline in a good way and in the bad way, like that they've been dealing with so many injuries. So I agree with those. That's good.
Last category here for the awards. Your non-Josh Allen MVP of the first half of the season. Overall MVP of this team so far.
Yeah, I mean, in the games he's played, it's probably been Taron Johnson, but like we've already talked about before, it's hard to give it to him when he's missed half the games. Like it's just he doesn't have the the cumulative stuff. I know I've said his name a lot in this particular podcast, but I really like what Greg Rousseau's done. I'm going to give it to James Cook right now, just because of the number of touchdowns and the number of yards, and that's kind of how like MVPs are determined. It's like scores, touchdowns, yards, all of that stuff, impact on the offense. So I'm going to lean James Cook over a defensive player. But I think that there's like several players that you could lump into this conversation and have a realistic chance of being right. So I'm sure you're going to give me one right now.
Well, Groot's my guy.
Okay.
Which is funny because if we go listen, and you're right about the standard and what, the metrics for going with an MVP. But I think back to this. If you were to tell me in September that Greg Rousseau halfway through a season has 4.5 sacks, I would have been like, that's pretty good. It's okay. That's nothing spectacular. That's not even on pace to get to double digits. And he's your non-Josh Allen MVP of this football team. I'd be like, the Bills are 7-2.
Everybody eats, man.
Everybody eats on the entire roster because, again, 4.5 sacks and not even on pace for 10. But yet I'm saying this guy's been the non-Josh Allen MVP of this football team. First of all, it just shows you that sacks can be such an overrated stat. Right. He's been really good against the run. He's had timely stops. He has won a Player of the Week award. He's just been solid all the way around, which kind of just makes, at the end of the year, let's just say he finishes with 8 to 9 sacks, and you go give him a $23 million a year extension, there's going to be some eyebrows raised, at least maybe, especially around the league, maybe not as much in Buffalo. But if you watch him play week after week, like we do, then you can understand why.
Yeah, he's averaging 2 quarterback hits a game. Like, he's got 11 tackles for a loss halfway through the season. So if he ends the season with 22 or 20 something tackles for a loss, I think you can look at some of those other stats that aren't sacks and be like, oh, he's playing really well. And then when you take into account how he is doing so well in, like, say, that edge contain in the run game, like, he's just always where he's supposed to be, it feels like. Or maybe it's just that his arms are so long that he always is where he's supposed to be because he has, like, a little bit of room for error on that stuff.
Right.
But he's just playing really, really well in this defense. And it would not shock me at all if he gets that $22 million per year extension and he's in the top 10 pass rushers in the NFL.
Yeah. If I were to rank the MVPs, Groot would win, and then I probably would go Cook and Benford 2 and 3. And you can make a case for a lot of guys after that who have been. Shakir is right up there as well. You know what we just did? We went through an entire nearly an hour of Bills awards, good and bad. And you know who we did not mention once? His name was literally not mentioned once this entire podcast to this point. And again, kind of makes your mind blown that the Bills are 7-2 and completely in the driver's seat in the AFC East. Not because he's been terrible, not because he's been elite, but Dalton Kincaid.
Dalton Kincaid, yes.
Dalton Kincaid. He's been goodish, but he hasn't been what we expected him to be during the season. I certainly couldn't make him a biggest disappointment because he hasn't been bad, but he's on pace right now, halfway point of the year, 60 catches for 627 yards and 4 touchdowns. That's better than like Dawson Knox's best year, but that's not, I think, what most Bills fans would have expected to see in September. Pretty wild, ain't it?
I mean, I was trying to say this right before the season. I know Bruce Nolan and I were talking about it. He ended up writing a post about it after he and I chatted over at Buffalo Rumblings. Like, Kincaid was never going to be the 1,000-yard receiver. He was never going to be a 100 catch guy. Like, his numbers, like I was expecting a touch better than 60 receptions and 600 yards. I was hoping for 700-800 yards. I was hoping really for 10 touchdowns. So that would be nice if he could get those numbers up. But as we've seen especially in the red zone, he really is the target of the defense. They know he's talented. We know he's talented. And so he'll get his eventually, especially if Amari Cooper actually comes back healthy and figures out this offense with Josh Allen. Keon Coleman starts to, get some of those contested catch balls in the end zone. Stuff is going to start opening up in that soft underbelly of defenses, and we'll get some more Dalton Kincaid touchdowns in the red zone.
Yeah. And look,
it's a good point.
Touchdowns, but that said, a couple 100-yard receiving games, which is not out of the realm of possibility for someone of his talents. And before you know it, the yards start to pile up. I just thought it was wild that we were going through the good, the bad, the ugly at the halfway point of the season. And we literally didn't even mention Dalton Kincaid one single time. All right. So before we get out of here, the Bills are sitting at, before we get out of here, actually, before I even talk about the conference at all, I want to go back one last time to Sunday. All right. Tyler Bass misses. Well, first in the first half, he makes a 40-yarder. Who gives a shit? But then he drills a 49-yarder late in the half. I'm like, ooh, okay. And it was a good kick. It was a no-doubt kick, and it didn't sneak through. You're like, all right, Tyler Bass has got it going on again. I'm starting to feel good about him because he made 3 field goals over the last 2 weeks. Granted, they were all chip shots. So we needed to see a longer kick. And he makes a 49-yarder after a 40-yarder. We're like, all right, cool. Second half, Bills score a touchdown. They go up 12-10. Tyler Bass misses an extra point. And then later, the next time the Bills score a touchdown, Tyler Bass clanks one off the upright, and he takes a lucky bounce, and it goes in. I'm like, this dude is a disaster, man. He is mentally shot. Here it goes again. One bad thing happens, avalanche. Sure enough, 61-yard field goal. I'm going to be honest with you. I've said it all week so far in the show. I give Sean McDermott a lot of credit. I would not have even brought him out there to attempt the kick. It's 4th and 10 seconds left. I'm like, try to get lucky to get a first down, on the outside where you can get out of bounds and maybe make that a 50-yarder or a 48-yarder, something like that, more manageable. And he brings out Bass, 61 yards. It's good. It would have been good for another 5 yards out. And not only the Bills win the game, which of course that matters the most. This might be a singular play though that kind of ignites the rest of his career going forward. This takes your mind, and your confidence to a whole other level. And I think after this kick, you can flush everything down the toilet that for him in his mind that's been going bad. Even going back to last year in the Kansas City game, this kind of hopefully kickstarts his career. But how shocked were you to see him go out there and then make a 61-yard field goal?
Yeah, I was just having this conversation with someone. I when he went out there, I'm like, he's going to make this kick. He's going to do it. It felt that way for me. I don't know if it was just to screw with me, if it was just to get my hopes up and then have them just be dashed. I was just like, he's going to make this kick. But to your point, if you give the Dolphins the ball at the 50 with 5 seconds left, there's a chance that they get enough yards on a 4-second play and call a timeout. Wait, did they have timeouts left?
Yeah, they did. They had 2.
There's a chance that they're going to, get into field goal range and win the game if you do that. Sean McDermott said Matt Smiley was feeling confident about it. They really wanted to get to the 40, even though they weren't really trying to get to the 40 on third down. They were going deep to, they went deep to Dalton Kincaid on that play.
Because he was open though.
Yeah, I know that would have been nice too. But I don't know. I had this calm come over me when he went out. I was like, I think he's going to make it. And that he did. He freaking drilled it too. There was no doubter.
It was incredible. Yeah, I look.
The yell I yelled.
Sanders, I'm like, he's making it. I did not expect that from Tyler Bass. In hindsight, I was mad. I was yelling at Josh Allen for a terrible pass on third down to Kincaid. Because Kincaid, a good pass, he catches that. He gets out of bounds. I think it would have only been a 43-yard field goal or something like that had he made that catch.
Might have been harder for Bass to make the 43.
Right. But as fate has it, again, this is what the Bills needed from Tyler Bass. And maybe he doesn't make it if it's a 46-yarder. Maybe he's in his own head. Maybe he came out there saying 61 yards. No one expects me to make this. He expected to. But it's like, yeah, maybe he felt like he was playing with house money because ain't no one in that stadium expected, except for maybe you, expected him to make that kick. All right, but now, so the Bills are 7-2. I've been saying for weeks and weeks that I ain't looking at nothing else except the AFC East. Win the division, get to the playoffs, and guarantee yourself a home game. Mm-hmm. Now the goalpost moves. The Bills are right now the second seed in the AFC. If the playoffs started tomorrow, the Bills are the second seed. Pittsburgh's only got 2 losses, but they had a bye, so they got one less win. Is the second seed going forward now for you the expectation with the Buffalo Bills? And if there's any downside to putting a wrap, so to speak, on this division, maybe that it's almost like a little too early. You don't want to get relaxed. So you need to move. If you're the Bills, you need to move that goalpost because you can't get too comfortable knowing that, hey, who cares? We lose. We're division champs. We're going to the playoffs. You know what I'm saying? What's your expectation at this point now?
I mean, I look at Houston's schedule. They have the Lions this week. They lost to the Jets, obviously, last week. Mm-hmm. They've got a stretch where they're playing the Cowboys, Titans, and Jaguars. They should head into their bye week, given at least pushing for a higher seed in the AFC. Then they come out and they have the Dolphins, Chiefs, Ravens before finishing with the Titans. So, it's not like they're going to run away with it either. I don't think that the Ravens are going to run away with it because they have all their division games coming up. They have to play Pittsburgh. They have to play Cleveland, and they lost to Cleveland. They still have to play Cincinnati. So, I think the Bills are definitely going to be in the mix for the 2 seed, which I don't know if I would have said a couple weeks ago.
Right.
That Baltimore loss was so huge, and now we got the Houston loss. And so it makes it a big deal. Buffalo has everything in front of them. They don't have they don't control their path to the 1 seed. Because the Chiefs have a game in hand over them, but they can play their way into a really good spot in this playoff picture. And I don't move the goalposts. Obviously they're still worried about winning the division, and I'm still that's still the main focus. But I tweeted after every game, 1-0, could go the whole Joe Brady, 1-0, 1-0. It's one game at a time. Beat the team in front of you and just keep working at it. Try to limit your mistakes, learn from your mistakes, plan ahead so that we don't make mistakes, all of that stuff. So, the regular season has lost a little bit of its luster, in the past, couple of years, which I don't know if I would have ever said that before, but it really is about how you're going to do in the playoffs. So if Matt Perino said earlier this week on your podcast that the Bills are, holding stuff in the bag for the playoffs or late in the season if they need it, I'm cool with that because that's the way more important storyline for me than whether or not they're going to be the 2 seed or the 4 seed.
Houston's obviously the team that you got to worry about most. You got one less loss in them, but they have beaten you, so you're going to lose a tiebreaker. The AFC North to me is just wild, dude. So Pittsburgh's 6-2, Baltimore 6-3. The Bengals are 4-5, and they are far from out of it because they still play Pittsburgh twice. They still play Baltimore again. It feels like those teams could beat up on each other a little bit. Mm-hmm. And the 2 seed is definitely there. I don't think it matters too. I do think it matters. Getting, first of all, obviously you'd play the 7 seed in the first round, but also you'd play the 3 seed at home. So if you were to play Baltimore or Cincinnati or something like that, or Houston, it would be actually if the Bills were the 2, Houston maybe they're the 3. It's a big deal playing Houston, for an example, in Buffalo as opposed to going back to Houston. Let me ask you this one. And by the way, that Chiefs game on Monday night so freaking annoying. That team, the way they find ways to win, Tampa should have. Why did they not go for 2? I mean, what do you think? Why do you not try to win the game there? I mean, you're 2.5 yards. You control the destiny. One play, try to win a football game. Oh, that was frustrating. This team.
Todd Bowles after the game, I have it pulled up. We wanted to get into overtime with the wet conditions on the field. We thought we had to go into overtime instead of going for 2, which is insane to me because everyone in the stadium and watching at home knew if you gave the ball back to Patrick Mahomes, that the Chiefs were going to go down and score a touchdown. Baker Mayfield's reaction to the coin toss was classic. He just throws his head back and just oh no, we just lost the game. I'm not even going to get the ball again. And he was right. So.
Quick breaking news as we're getting ready to get out of here. Tom Pelissero just reported Mike Edwards has asked for a trade. There's been that's where he didn't get a trade, so he's been granted his release. The Bills are cutting Mike Edwards, so he's going to be a free agent. People might say, well, why would you do that? The only thing I could think of off the top of my head without, this just happening seconds ago, without time to process this, is a lot of times GMs like to be known as player friendly. Like, y'all work with a player if it's not working out. And potential free agents or trade candidates down the road, these are the kind of things they remember. You know what I mean? So that could be a reason why. Plus, they just don't like him as a football player. What a crummy signing that turned out to be. Well, there you go. If the Bills aren't adding Micah Hyde, which I won't discount that until after this next week, but if they're not adding Micah Hyde, I don't know what maybe sign gets elevated from the practice squad. I don't know what they're doing. But anyway, Mike Edwards, it certainly looks like by the time you're watching or listening to this, is going to be a former Buffalo Bill. I want to ask you one question, then we're out. Didn't ask you this ahead of time, so this was in no notes.
Okay.
The Miami Dolphins are 2-6.
Mm-hmm.
The New York Jets are 3-6. Which of those two teams, if you had to bet right now, probably neither, but if you had to pick one of those teams to end up in the playoffs, who do you pick? I mean, the Jets got the extra win right now.
The Jets.
It's the Jets. Yeah, the Jets.
It's the Jets.
Okay, you know what? You're probably right. Look, they're at Arizona this week. That ain't no gimme, man. Yep. That ain't no gimme. Arizona's been playing some good football, but if they get past them, they got Indy at home, Seattle at home, at Miami, at the Jags, the Rams, at the Bills, and Buffalo, and Miami left. So they play at Buffalo, and they still got to play Miami twice.
Yeah, but Miami's schedule is just a bear. They're playing the Rams. They've got the Packers. They've got the Jets, the Texans, the 49ers.
Yeah, they're done.
I
think Miami's a better team, though.
And plus, Miami has to play at Cleveland and at New Jersey in December and January. Like, we've shown that they don't play well outside down the stretch.
True.
And so, they have to play at Green Bay, at the end of November. Is that Thanksgiving? It must be. Yeah. So, it's going to be very hard for the Dolphins to climb out of this hole that they have dug themselves. And they don't have a bye. They've already had their bye, whereas the Jets get a week to rest up at some point coming up here in a couple weeks. And so I don't see how the Dolphins are going to, pull out of this tailspin.
I love doing these tapings with you at this time, 99% of the time. I leave this podcast intrigued with Mike Edwards getting granted release. Like I said, that looks good in the eyes of future free agent potential guys that, the GM here looks out for the players. What it also does is it's going to open up a roster spot. Is that going to be filled internally? Is that going to be filled via a trade? Is that going to be filled via somebody who used to play for the Bills, who plays that same position, who's probably been staying in shape? But I don't think so, because I don't think Micah Hyde comes back to be a backup. Like, he ain't coming back out of retirement to be a backup. And that Mike Edwards hasn't even been active. So maybe Micah, if he were to sign, he goes on the practice squad for a handful of weeks, gets himself up to speed, and then comes up, close to playoff time. I don't know. The possibilities are intriguing, though, dude.
They've got 2 weeks and then the bye week. If they're going to bring Micah Hyde back for a stretch run, you could see him coming back, being activated December 1st against the San Francisco 49ers for those last 6 games to build up to the playoffs. Kind of like I've been talking about Matt Milano. Like, at some point in December, I want him to come back, play a limited number of snaps, and just start getting back into the field. I don't need him to be all pro Matt Milano against the Lions on December 15th, or certainly against the Patriots on the 22nd. But by January 12th, when the Bills play in the first round of the playoffs, I would love Matt Milano to be all pro Matt Milano. So I would love Micah Hyde to be all pro Micah Hyde.
Let's end with this intriguing possibility. One of them very well could happen, and one of them very far-fetched, admittedly. But you could be looking at a Bills defense right now that by December, mid-December, as we're winding down our Christmas shopping, you get a healthy Matt Milano back, which, even if he's not quite 2022 Matt Milano, he's still better than Dorian Williams. Again, no disrespect to Dorian, my surprise breakout or surprise player of the year so far in this award show. But if you were to get a healthy, fresh Micah Hyde, let's say he's somewhere in the middle. He's not all pro Micah Hyde, but he's also not last year's banged up, getting a stinger every third week, borderline washed up Micah Hyde. He's somewhere in the middle of that. Oh boy, that would be fun. Man. Again, Mammalano, very realistic. Micah Hyde, probably just talking out of my ass right now. I think Edwards getting released is just an opportunity to get somebody up, like, say, maybe Ile Anku with Smoot. Well, Smoot's going on IR, so Anku might get that call up even without Smoot, that roster spot. A lot of possibilities. Let's just leave it at that, man.
Okay. Sounds good.
All right. And again, tomorrow I'm going to have Eric Wood on the show, talking Bills, talking Taylor Swift, how things are going for him in the booth. But that'll be tomorrow's for today. Thank you, Matt. It's always fun having you on, buddy.
Always fun to be on. Thanks.
All right, guys, be back. Brand new show tomorrow.